Hey, listen. What bold looks like right now? That is what we're going to talk about today. What does bold look like right now? Obedience over optics. Okay. Listen, bold isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet faithfulness with fierce clarity. Listen, bold doesn't mean visible. It means being obedient. Oh, being obedient to what? To whatever that is that's coming up for you. Okay. Listen, this life lesson is really about discussing what does bold look like right now. Listen, you've been waiting to feel bold, to take a leap, and to make it big. But what if bold isn't the stage or the shouts? What if bold is saying no to what drains you? What if bold is praying before you post? What if bold is the doing the quiet things that God asked you to do what last season? Okay, listen, today's life lesson, we'll really define or redefine what it means to be bold. All right, because bold doesn't always trend, right? But it always transforms. All right, and I really want to have this conversation again. We're talking about how to unlock your potential. We're on the last week, and it would have been you know just not right for me to do these last two sessions, which is the P and the it factor. And so today we're going to do the P. All right. The P is for patterns. I mean, today we're going to do the P, which is for the patterns and paradigms. All right. And it's really about redefining what bold is, right? Because what, and I want you to ask yourself, what does bold look like for you right now? Like, not in theory, not next year, but today. Today, with what you have in this season, what does being bold for you look like? Okay. Again, today's focus is really about obedience, capacity, and just the courage to be present. We're talking about kick, start, bold action this week. All right. It's the end of unlocking what? Unlocking your potential, all of that energy, all of that emotion, all of that aspiration, all of that stuff that you have in you, right? That is the potential, right, for your greatness. And again, we know potential is like the unused energy, right? The stuff you've been talking about, the hopes, the dreams, right? How to unlock that, right? And so the first week we talked about uncovering, right? What's holding you back. Okay. The second week we talk about noticing your patterns and really stop numbing, right? So the way we unlock is, uncovering what has been holding you back. All right. The second thing we talked about is noticing the patterns in the second week, right? Stop numbing yourself and noticing these patterns. The third week, we talked about letting go of those false narratives, right? Letting go of those stories that people have been telling you that's just not true for you anymore. Then last week, you're talking about open mind, right? Being open to possibility and really claiming your power. And we're wrapping this week up, you guys, with kickstarting with bold action. If you see me looking back, it's because I have everything listed, right, of what we talk about and what we're going to talk about every day, right, just so I can get it right. Like, that was my bold action to really stop thinking that I can think about stuff and really start holding myself accountable, right? By writing things down and saying I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, which again, this has been a long week, right? Where we started off the month of July, which I knew that it was gonna come into the month of June, and that's fine, right? It's fine that it's doing that. But within that, right, this has seemed like a long series because we had the graduation, we just had a lot of things, some technical issues. So I want to make sure that I give you guys these last two days of this phenomenal series, which is unlocking your potential. Okay, so again, what does bold look like for you right now? Okay, bold isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet obedience with fierce consistency. Okay, listen, this life lesson actually helps you to reframe boldness from performance to simply your presence, right? From doing to being. And again, a big part of this next couple of series is really going to be how do you move from doing, right? The thing that you have been programmed to do, to just being present. All right. Listen, true boldness isn't always big, you guys. It's about choosing obedience in the moment with what you have. All right. What do you have right now? It brings up that parable to me of when the lady, her husband passed, right? She had the two kids and her husband left her with this debt, right? And she went to one of the lords and she asked that lord, I need you to help me to get me out of debt, which was a bold request, right? And that lord asked her back, what do you have, right? And she said, well, all I have is some oil, right? All I have is some oil. He said, well, go gather up some bottles, right? Get you and your sons together. Go gather up the bottles. She gathered up the bottles, right? Once she had to take a bold action and go ask her neighbors for these jars, right? So she had all of these jars, right? And basically started to pour the oil, which is what she had, right? Which she minimized, right? She minimized this oil that she had, but it was a bold move for her to go to the Lord. He said, what do you have? She said, I have this oil. He said, okay, go ask your neighbors for jars. So she goes and get these jars. She comes back to him. Now, mind you, the oil didn't stop pouring till she got to the last jar, right? So she could have went and got 10 jars. She could have went and got 50 jars. She could have went and got 100 jars, right? Because the oil didn't stop until the last jar. So we don't know how many jars she got, but I think that's a pivotal point, right? How much she felt like she needed, that's when the oil stopped pouring for her. And anyway, she go back to the guy and he said, okay, now go sell it, right? Go sell it, which was another bold move. All right. Listen, I want you to think about, what does boldness look like for you today? Not someday, but right now. Okay. Listen, what if bold doesn't look like the book launch? It doesn't look like the stage. It doesn't look like the viral moment, right? What if bold is sending that email? What if bold is having that hard conversation? What if bold is resting when your hustle or your body or your mind is saying grind? Listen, today we learn boldness isn't about volume, how loud you are, right? It's about alignment, right? It's about alignment. So this session is for you if you've been really comparing your place, right? If you've been comparing your pace, right, and calling it procrastination. It's for the one who thought that they wasn't being brave when really you have been quietly obedient, right? You have been quietly obedient. I want to give this disclaimer, okay? Awareness that you want more is not the same of choosing boldness within what you already carry, right? Boldness doesn't demand visibility. It does require vulnerability. Again, the awareness for today is that awareness that you want more is not the same as choosing boldness within what you already carry. All right. Again, hello. Welcome back to another life lesson. If you're new here, I'm Dr. Sheila. Been a clinical therapist now for 20 years. Life Lessons is a part of the Project Life initiative, and Project Life is where we turn theory into practice. And I forgot to tell you that I am the creator of the Stop and Now method. All right, and really helping people to really stop doing the things that's preventing them from getting um ahead in life, from allowing them to, I say, align, advance, and accelerate their life. All right. So again, welcome back. What does being bold look like for you today? All right. Some of us are looking for the courageous thing or waiting for the perfect moment, right? And so today's session is really about, listen, what does bold look like for you today? So today's session is for you if you've been downplaying your small moves because you don't think they're bold or they don't look bold, right? It's for you if you've been delaying obedience because you've been waiting for this bigger stage. And it's for you if you've forgotten that obedience is boldness in motion. This season for me is about being obedient, which again is why we're on a holiday, right? And I'm recording this because I wanted to be obedient to make sure that I was doing the things that I said I was going to do, which was to do this life lesson or do these series. Yesterday, There was some issues with the technology. I realized that I didn't have batteries, right? My computer just wasn't turning on. So I had to shift, right? And I really wanted to get this out. To me, that was a bold move, right? Because I could have just said, okay, I'll catch them another day. But just being obedient to what I feel like I was called to do, challenging people to be obedient to what they were called to do. So when I'm working with my clients, really saying, okay, what is the obedient thing, right? What is that? And if you don't know what that is, really getting them to focus and talking about that. All right. So what is our powerful quote for today? Listen, bold doesn't always look big. It just looks like obedience. And let's talk about obedience because, I think that we want to redefine it for the adult you and not for the obedience that we are used to having, right? So I think that when we're little, we think about obedience and it's like following directions and all of that. And this is true, but there was like this punitiveness, I think, that when we were little, this fear, right? So it could have been fear motivated more. And this obedience as an adult is really just aligning, right? It's more about doing what you know you should be doing or doing what you was called to do, right? And being obedient to that space, right? To that specific pattern in your life that's authentically creating energy. That's what space stands for, right? And so, are you being obedient to the call for your life, which will require, sometimes for you to look like you're rebelling, right? Sometimes, again, it's the small things like getting up, doing what you say you're going to do, getting up, living in integrity, right? Like these things that it doesn't always have a consequence to it, right? You're not going to get punished, right? But it will delay your reward, right? If you don't really step into this obedience. So it's not like if you don't do the thing that you're going to get on punishment for the next 3 days, right? But it may delay, right, the thing that you desire so much. So we're going to have this conversation today because I think that is very important. Listen, today we celebrate the bold individuals who make the quiet moves in faith, right? Boldness is often hidden. Hidden where? Hidden in the mundane, right? In the boundaries, in the journal entries, right? In the no's that align with your purpose, right? Today's bold might not trend the way you think it will, but it will transform, right? It's in these little things. I was talking to my brother and I was just telling him how different he was because like he breaks his money down and he like just does things like he intermittent fast, he like meal preps. I had the opportunity to be with a bunch of my family over the last weekend. And I have a friend, Angela, who's very just disciplined, right? Very obedient. Like she actually brung her protein shakes and she eats at a certain time, just very, but you can see it, right? You can see it in their body. They're lean, they're healthy, their skin looks good, right? Just them being obedient to this lifestyle of healthy eating and doing those things, right? And so, but those are both actions, very subtle, right? Neither one of those two individuals I would consider, bold and flashy, but just very strong in their presence and the whispers, right? And a lot of you have that, right? A lot of you are very strong in your presence, very consistent in your ways, right? And today we want to really talk about that and lift that because sometimes you may not even be honoring this space of boldness that you're doing. And then if we're going to rewrite what you think bold is, all right? So again, the last lesson that I talked about really stretched you through some discomfort. Okay. Today we're going to anchor in truth that boldness doesn't mean ease or exposure. You know what it means? It means courage and motion. All right. I had a client, her name was Jada. All right. Jada told me I could do this. Jada didn't post her wins online, but she finally had a conversation with her mom that healed decades of silence, right? That that is what bold looked like for Jada. Really not this spotlight, but this sacred alignment, right? So it wasn't so much about the vacation she was taking or, all of that stuff. It was this having the courage to finally have this conversation with her mom, right? I also had a client that was having some issues, or yeah, some issues with her family dynamic. And so she finally had a conversation with her mate, her husband, after like years and years and years, right? That was the bold move for her, right? And a lot of times I think we think bold is like getting in front of the courtroom, or getting in front of the in the conference, or during the meeting, and saying, this thing that you want to say, or creating this ideal. And sometimes the bold move for you is simply having the conversation, right? Is actually speaking up for yourself and advocating for yourself in a way that you probably haven't advocated yourself for yourself before. So let's kind of start redefining bold as this thing that you do because you know it needs to be done. And it may not ring loud, but it's bold for you. All right. And let's applaud that in you. So at this moment, let's go into our heart check in. I want you to ask yourself, what obedience have you been delaying because it didn't look bold enough? All right. And again, a lot of times we say stuff like, oh, that don't matter. Like, you need to have this conversation. You need to talk to this friend. You need to, pull somebody to the side, and you're dimming it like, oh, that doesn't matter. This does it. And it's not, it does matter. You know who it matters to? You. It's going to shift the trajectory of experiences in your life, how you move, how you grow, right? So it does matter. Listen, sometimes we hesitate, not because we lack courage, but because we were taught that boldness must be big, it must be visible, and it must be dramatic. Listen, this moment is all about reclaiming your inner authority and really redefining obedience as boldness in action. All right. So ask yourself, have I been waiting to feel uh to feel grand before I could believe that it's valid? You are grand without that stage. You are grand. You are huge. You are big. You are beautifully and wonderfully made, in the silence of you, in the presence of you, in the loudness of you, right? But sometimes we feel like if it's not loud, if it ain't big, then it ain't bold. And that's just like not true. Some of those, pillow talks as the boldest things that you can do. Sometimes pulling your kid to the side and apologizing may be the boldest thing you can do. You know why? Because it's redefining how you look at life. It's redefining your belief system. You going against everything that has ever happened. We were having a conversation, and I don't remember who I was having this conversation with. I'm trying to think, but it's coming up in my spirit. But this individual, was just talking about how their family was very independent and how they were raised to be independent. And for me, the bold action for that individual was, well, maybe in your family, everybody was raised to be independent, but maybe you can break the generational hold, right, of this everybody is independent and for themselves. And maybe you can take the bold action of actually breaking that, and leaning and asking for help and getting the assistance that you need. A very bold action, especially when you've been taught don't trust nobody, the blood is everything, your blood family is everything. And now you're going to actually be vulnerable enough to say, hey, I need help. you know and these are the silent, bold, great moments that change their trajectory experience. And I do think that conversation was very telling for that individual, because they just believed like independence was everything, but they also was carrying a lot underneath this belief of blood first, family is everything, and don't trust nobody. Yeah, but you're carrying weight though, right? And so the bold thing for them would be to let your guards down and ask for help. All right, listen, here's some truth that I want you to know. Boldness isn't always public. It's often private, right? The quiet decisions you make, the boundaries you hold, the healing you protect are bold acts of faith, you guys. Listen, these private moments become the foundation for public resilience, okay? Number two, God honors obedience more than optics, you guys. Listen, heaven creates your alignment, not your audience, all right? What feels unseen on earth may be loud in the spirit, all right, in your divinity. All right. So boldness isn't for applause, it's for the assignment, right? And what's coming up in my spirit is that verse that really talks about this, right? That what you do in in silence or in private, God will honor in public, right? Right. So sometimes the bold thing that you're doing is behind closed doors. Nobody's seeing it. All right. Number three, you don't need a platform to be bold. You just need to be present. All right. Listen, boldness lives in your ability to be fully present and faithful to what you have been given. Not a stage required, just daily grounded alignment. All right. Hold on one. Okay. All right. Number four, boldness in this season may be boundaries. It may be rest for you, or it may be for you to retreat. All right. The most courageous act may be saying no. It may be stepping back from some things, and it may be prioritizing your peace. Don't dismiss this divine weight of your quietness or your quiet yes to alignment. All right. Don't dismiss the sacred weight of your quiet yes with alignment. All right. Listen, gratitude, the last but not least, gratitude for your current capacity unlocks your next level. Listen, you don't build momentum by despising small beginnings. All right. When you honor your now moment, you make room for your next moment, you guys. Listen, boldness starts with gratitude. All right. With just appreciating what you have. That's a bold step because so many of us is living in the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. What if I would have did this? What if I had this? And sometimes the bold move is like, okay, that is what it is. It's going to be what it's going to be. But let me accept what I have now, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. That's so bold. And just sit in it and breathe that in. Listen, you just caught up with life. Now, anything that you want to do, anything that you feel like you need, now let's move forward. Who do you need to be to get that? But let's just be bold in this moment and just accept it. Accept life, right? And listen for that whisper that's resisting it. Let that be. We don't have to judge it, but the present adult grown you in this moment. Just be bold and accept. Okay, listen, boldness isn't one big leap. It's the many honest obedient steps. All right. Why is this or why does that matter? If you mislabel your courage as not enough, you actually start delaying divine movement within you. It's not that it's not happening, but you can't see it. And the real value in that is when you redefine boldness, you actually start to reclaim your momentum, right? You actually start to catch up with life. You start waiting for the perfect moment and you actually start honoring the present one. Okay, evidence shows um, that research shows that micro movements aligned with purpose creates more sustainable growth than one time visible moments. Right. So that means that micro moments, doing it over and over and over again, shows more sustainable growth than this one big time that you do something. Listen, I had a client that said once I realized the way I show up for myself is bold, I stop apologizing for not moving like that with everyone else. All right, listen, bold is this, right? This is being bold, and bold is obedient, you guys. All right, so we know that the P and the stop and now process stands for patterns and paradigms. Okay. Many of us carry outdated definitions of what it means to be bold. So definitions shaped by visibility, shaped by noise and external validation. But true boldness, you guys, is an internal rhythm, not an external result. Okay. So these truths really help to rewire these old paradigms or the old ways that we see life so that you can start showing up in quiet, divine alignment, sacred alignment, not just this hype driven performance that we run and chase. All right. And without feeling the fulfillment. All right. So here's 10 essential things that I want to talk about under this category that really helps with the patterns and paradigms. One, obedience is boldness in seed form. All right. So the boldest moves often start small, right? When you obey these divine nudges or these intuitive nudges, even if no one sees it, right? You're planting courage in the soil of your life, right? That grows stronger later. All right. So sometimes we make bold moves today that we don't reap that, until a long time from now, or sometimes even tomorrow. um, I made a bold move to apply to this company to get CEU credits, right? And they rejected it, right? They rejected the course that I did, but I found out last year they approved though my company to do courses, right? So this is like a very small thing that I did. I didn't even think about it anymore, like once they filled it, but they kept doing research and it's like, this is a good company. We're gonna approve her for CEU credits, right? That was a bold move that I made 4 years ago. And, 4 years later, it changed the trajectory of what I was able to do. Again, bold doesn't require a spotlight. Listen, you don't need an audience to be powerful. The boldest moments often happen in silence, behind the scenes, with no applause, just your obedience, you guys. Purpose is often hidden in private obedience. Listen, big breakthroughs begin with faithful moments, not in the faithful moments that no one else is witnessing. So obedience unlocks clarity even before purpose feels visible. All right. A couple of more. Real obedience is rhythm, not hype. I talked about this a little bit earlier. Listen, you don't need to make noise to make moves. All right. You do not need to make a noise to make moves. Consistent courage, practice daily, builds more momentum than sporadic performative bursts. Right? We see this. This is called lifestyle changes, right? We're doing stuff consistently over and over again. I want you to know that gratitude turns new moves into next level momentum. Again, just being grateful and thankful. When you're thankful for what you can do right now, you actually activate and amplify its power. All right. So gratitude multiplies impact and keeps the ego in check, you guys. All right. Um, Something else I want you to know is that delay doesn't always come from fear. It comes from distorted definitions. So sometimes we're not afraid, we're just misinformed. Okay. Sometimes it has nothing to do with fear. You just don't have the right information. When you've been told that bold must be loud, you will wait, right? You will wait instead of walking quietly in your truth. All right. Micro faith builds micro trust. So small steps in trust or small steps in trust taken repeatedly builds internal security and external evidence. So boldness becomes a lifestyle when practiced daily. And the last couple of ones, boldness without presence is performance, you guys. So if you're bold, um, but disconnected from purpose, right? It can seem noisy, all right? When boldness flows from your presence, guess what? That's sacred and that's divine. So the real courage is rooted, not rushed. All right. So again, boldness without your presence is performance. All right. If you're bold, but disconnected from a purpose, guess what? It's loud. But when your bold actually flows from your present, it's divine and sacred. All right. Courage becomes consistent through clarity. All right. So the clearer you are about your why, the more unwavering your yes becomes, even in the face of fear. And then last but not least, if you're breathing, right, I want you to know you have the capacity to be bold when today. You have the capacity to be bold today. Bold isn't a personality, it's a choice. And it's a choice that you make in every moment of the day, every day of the week. Okay? Listen, if you have breath, you have purpose. And if you have purpose, guess what? Boldness is already within you. All right? All right. If that made sense, put a heart in the chat as we move to our biblical wisdom on today. All right. So, our biblical wisdom is Luke 16 and 10. Listen, whoever is faithful with the little will be trusted with much. All right, listen, the interpretation of this is that big moves start with small obedience. The kingdom multiplies when you honor, or the kingdom multiplies what you honor, not what you hype. So again, Luke 16 and 10, whoever is faithful in a little will be treated or will be trusted with much. How does that tie into today's life lesson? Listen, this verse isn't about quantity, okay? It's about integrity in small places. In this life lesson, we're redefining boldness not as some huge visible act, but as the doing the faithful thing in the now, okay? Doing the faithful thing in the now, all right? Even if no one sees it. So Luke 10 or 16 and 10 affirms that boldness begins in private obedience. It's the quiet yes to boundaries, to journaling, to healing, to saying no that honors your alignment. Listen, bold is not the size of your steps, you guys. It's the it's the sincerity of your obedience. All right. So God isn't measuring how loud you are. God is actually watching how honest you are in these small moments. So this verse really tells you how you handle what's in your hand now determines what's placed in them next. All right. So again, this verse tells you that it tells you that how you handle what's in your hands now determines what's placed in them next. Listen, you don't get trusted with more because you show off. You get trusted with more, or you get it trusted with more by how you show up consistently, even when it's hard and even when it's quiet. All right. So, I wanna start looking at the neuroscience of these verses too. So when we look at the neuroscience of the verse, because I think it's going to be very important in this biblical wisdom. Again, I'm taking this verse and I'm making it practical, right, for this divinity in you. And I want to tie it back to neuroscience. I saw an individual doing it and I thought it was a very bold move. And I love it because I know the science behind a lot of verses. So I want to start to incorporate that here. All right. So here's the neuroscience behind this verse. So again, Luke 16 and 10. Whoever is faithful with a little will be trusted with much. Here's the scientific parallel to this. Behavioral momentum and habit theory. Listen, in psychology, we know that small, consistent acts actually build what identity and momentum. All right. So faithfulness in a little creates a pattern that the brain recognizes as trustworthy behaviors, leading to what? More capacity and more confidence. Neural pathways reinforced, right? So the brain then is able to strengthen whatever behaviors is practiced. So repetition creates what? Neural pathways, right? Small acts of integrity actually reinforce. Small acts of integrity is what you do when nobody's looking. So these small acts of integrity, right? They start to reinforce self-trust, which makes larger challenges easier to approach over time. Why? Because these neural pathways are being built when you're doing things consistently. So again, when the verse says, whoever is faithful with the little will be trusted with much, in these small things that you're doing, right? You're shifting and changing how the brain works. And the last thing is the self-efficacy theory, right? Being successful in small tasks actually builds the belief in our ability to handle bigger ones. So this scripture mirrors the science of progressive mastery. When trained for more by having listen, I'm sorry. This scripture mirrors the science of progressive mastery. We're trained for more by how we handle what the now, by how we handle what we have. And a lot of us are not expanding in our capacity because we're not even handling the little that we have. All right. Okay. So again, when whoever is faithful with the little will be trusted with much. All right. So let's go to our promise verse. If you like that, put a heart in the chat for me. Let's go to our promise verse. 1 Corinthians 16 and 13. All right. Be on guard, stand firm in faith, be courageous, and be strong. The interpretation of this isn't about performative strength. It's about consistent courage, right? Boldness is rooted in steadiness. All right, listen, be on guard, stand firm in faith, be courageous, and be strong. All right, this verse actually gives a posture of boldness, right? One that isn't flashy, but grounded. All right, it's not be loud, be perfect, and be viral. It's stand, be bold, be consistent, be courageous, right? That's exactly what this session or this life lesson is teaching. Boldness doesn't mean noise, it means not moving off of what you know to be true. All right. Your current obedience is your boldness, you guys. All right. Listen, you don't need to broadcast your strength to be validated. You don't need a title, a platform, or approval. You just need to keep showing up for what's true, even when it feels ordinary. All right. This verse is not asking for energy, it's asking for your endurance. All right. The kind of boldness that says, I'm still here and I still believe what God said. All right. So here's the scientific parallel to this. Uh, Stress resilience and emotional regulation. Science shows that courage isn't the absence of fear, right? It's the ability to remain regulated while taking action. So this verse encourages emotional resilience with aligned, which aligns with what? Which aligns with, I'm sorry, which aligns with what? This verse mirrors the science of I'm so sorry. I lost it. All right. So this verse, science shows that that courage isn't the absence of, I'm sorry. Okay, there we go. Okay, so science shows that, I'm so sorry, you guys. Science shows that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the ability to remain regulated while what taking action. So this verse encourages emotional endurance, which aligns with the psychology of distress tolerance and the nervous system resilience. All right. Grounded in somatic practices. Listen, stand firm and being strong. This is actually reflects somatic practices. All right. Groundedness helps the nervous system really stay calm under pressure. Just like this verse, science affirms that embodiment strengthens resilience. All right. And then the cognitive reframing. Courage and strength are cognitive postures. When cognitive is mental postures, not emotion. So cognitive behavior therapy, which is CBT, really teaches us that uh, choosing our thoughts change how we feel and act. So staying firm in your faith is a cognitive behavioral therapy. All right. These verses just don't complement science. Guess what they affirm it? They show that faith and psychology often agree that transformation starts small. Courage is a muscle and presence what beats performance. All right. So both these verses actually honor the sacredness of small obedience and actually redefine boldness as consistent in alignment. All right. As consistency and alignment. Luke 1 and 10 says, you know, or your now matters. And then first Corinthians 16 and 13 says, stand in your now, right? Even when it shakes you. Together, they both support this life lessons core mission, which is bold isn't being out there. Bold is right here, right? So bold is not out there. Bold is right here. It's what you do with what you have in obedience right now. Okay, so here's my question for you. Two questions actually. What does bold obedience look like in your current capacity? And then number two, what's one small obedient act you've been underestimating when it might actually be building your capacity? All right. So let's put this into practice. All right. So today, your action steps is going to be identify what bold looks like for you today. Take that small step, that obedient step, then name it as bold, and then give thanks to your current capacity. All right. If you need a journal prompt, that's what have you been calling small that actually is sacred. All right. And then your affirmation for today: I release the roles that no longer serve me. I am free to be my authentic self. And then your daily intention today: redefine bold as showing up with what I have. And here's your bonus challenge. I want you to share one bold move you've made this week. All right. No matter how quiet it seemed. And you know that I'm going to do that call, that challenge, and that charge. Here's the call. What quiet act of boldness are you choosing today? Okay. The challenge is, how can you honor your current capacity? And the charge is, bold is not someday, bold is now. So go and shape your life. Listen, if this session resonated with you, okay, and you're walking away with some insight today, I need you to drop a fire in the chat and let's celebrate our growth together. All right. Listen, and if this life lesson, right, if this lesson reminded you that that obedience is bold, you already know Project Life will help you keep showing up in that way. If you're interested in that project, you can join us anytime at SheilaLittle.com/life. And here's a reminder: you don't have to be big to be bold. You just have to be present and consistent, you guys. I am excited to end this series with our next life lesson, which is stop waiting and start becoming, right? Because boldness becomes real when you actually stop waiting for permission to start acting. I want you to remember this: if you can shape it in your mind, you can have it in your life. I want you to know that I love you. I love you. I love you. All right. And listen, bold doesn't require approval. It actually requires alignment. Do you, or do what you can with what you have in this moment. And I'm telling you that that is the bold thing that you can do today. All right. I love you. I love you. I love you again. And I will see you tomorrow for that life lesson. All right. Till later.